Welcome, faithful viewers, to Breaking Diaspora Barriers. My name is Reverend Canon Lameck Mutete from the Zimbabwe National Anglican Fellowship. This is a podcast which is meant to encourage, inspire many viewers who have managed to settle into this country. And we'll be interviewing many people from all walks of life who obviously have managed to break the barriers in this country. And today, my host is none other than Reverend Tariro Julian Mukoja. Welcome, Reverend Mukoja, to our podcast. And I must confess that I was very happy to call you to this interview because you're going to be speaking on behalf of the young, because you came here as a very, very young child. And I'm sure you have loads of stories. But to take us through, I just want to take you back to Zimbabwe as a young teenager. And did you have any dream of coming into this country?
No. Well, thank you very much for having me on the podcast first. To answer your question, I never thought I would end up in this country. You would see, obviously, movies as young children sitting on the floor after school, and you can see the American life, the British life. Maybe we saw more of the American life. And, snow feels dreamy and all of it. But I think I just never thought that's a life that I would end up in, and God works in mysterious ways, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Take us through your education in Zimbabwe. How far did you go in terms of education before you moved to this country? And did you really enjoy, did you miss your friends when you finally had to leave Zimbabwe? Because there's one thing that I realized, that we as parents, when we say we are about to go to the UK, we don't tell a lot of people. But our children as well, it's a question of them simply packing and following our instructions. And all of a sudden, the next thing is you're on a flight. So tell me about that.
So I grew up in a very small community, which was created, I think, because there was a power plant. I did my crash, as we would call it, there.
ECD now.
ECD now. And I think I'm one of those children who went early before their time. I think because I think I'm quite competitive, I would want to think.
Oh, you're causing trouble in your home.
Not really, but I grew up as an only girl. So my brothers were my friends. And so my older brother, the one who I come after, was going to crash ECD. And the thought of me staying behind was not one that I entertained to an extent that my mother had to ask the ECD teachers to say, can you just make an allowance? And I think she had, privileges because she herself was a teacher. Okay. And so between teacher to teacher, it was okay. So I went to ECD, went to the local primary school there. And, as young children, you would finish school. And one of my fond memories, I think, was when we would finish exams. We would go out earlier than normal. And we would go to the little hills that were sort of outside the school gate, and Taijuru, Jamajuru. And, we just used to enjoy such little things, and you'd fill your lunchbox with them, you would go home and cook them, and there was such a delicacy and all of it. I finished grade 7 at the local primary school, and I had, I think I should say, the privilege of going to a boarding school. And yes, indeed. And it was also a mission school. Oh, yeah. I guess when you grow up in a Christian family, it's exactly. So I went to a mission school, and it was after I had finished my O-levels that I came to the UK. And yes, I think I didn't know what I was going to. And I have to admit, I missed my friends.
As a young person, when you are going to the United Kingdom, it's almost like going to the place of milk and honey. When you arrived, how did you feel?
I think I was excited. Mind you, this wasn't something that we could tell everybody we were doing this. Yeah. So I remember going to pick up my O-level results at the school that I went to, and they were so excited, say, oh, you passed so well, you know, we can offer you a place for A-levels here. And I was just, you know, you're trying to be evasive with your answer, but saying, oh, I'm not sure, I'll have to find out from the parents. And less than a week later, I was on the flight coming here. And I'd been told that, you know, it's cold. I arrived in February. It was cold. They said dress warm. And I thought, you know what? My long skirt, my little top, and a little jumper. I was even wearing flip-flops.
What month was that?
It was February.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
So I remember getting here and, you know, as soon as you land and you get out of the plane, by then Air Zimbabwe was still moving. So it was just one flight. You were not connecting or anything. The wind that blew in, I really thought, did I make a mistake?
What am I wearing?
It was exactly. It was very cold. And I think I remember the first few weeks I came with my little brother then. We spent a lot of time looking out the window, you know, seeing snow on the ground, but also being very cold and thinking, how do people go outside? How is this normal? Because our version and understanding of winter, you know, is almost summer in this country. And so it was being taken to a whole different world. And the reality of what they show on the movies is different when you are living it. Exactly. But at the same time, it was an exciting opportunity of, okay, what's in store for me?
Yeah. This program is about breaking barriers. And like I said, we are very much unaware at times as parents that you also have to break your own barriers as well. Because all of a sudden you're in this country and the next thing you're supposed to adapt to this cold climate. And you can't say, I want to go back home, because they say, this is a good country. And obviously the next thing you found yourself probably going to school here. How was it like the first days?
It was challenging, to say the least. I think, although academically I was advanced in a way, I think technology-wise, I might as well have just walked from a rural village. I didn't have an email account, and they were doing things using emails, you sent emails and so forth. I didn't know how to use a computer. And I applied to a local college. Mind you, I had to wait 6 months because coming in February is the middle of the year. And so when I started, you know, induction was on a computer, and I'm thinking, what am I even supposed to press on here? And
all the keys.
Yes, exactly. And I think we never, as much as I'd come into this country, I never thought about it until that very first day when I walked into college. And I'm super grateful for my induction tutor, because when they said, turn on the computers, I looked the person next to me, I saw what they pressed, I also pressed. But the problem is, you now need to know what to do when you get inside. Exactly. So she gave instructions, and I realized that I'm right at the deepest end of the pool. And so I then just asked her to come around, which she did. And she just told me to pause and said she would help me afterwards. So I literally just sat throughout the whole induction, and she had to go through the process with me.
There's this assumption that all students are the same, and yet for people who move into this country as migrants, they find it very difficult the early days. And you were very fortunate enough to find a tutor who was able to walk through with you, because in many instances, you just gallop along, you know. And I remember at one time in the university where I ended up saying, you know what, all these examples that you are giving, because I didn't know anything about this country. And I remember them saying, oh, do you know, is there anybody, have you ever been to this particular place? I can't even remember what they were talking about. And everybody said, yes. And I was saying, I don't know what they're talking about. So they give examples of things that we have no clue about. And yet you are part and parcel of what is going on. So anyway, going along with education, when was the breakthrough when you realized that you are now part of the system?
I think it took me at least a few weeks in terms of just wrapping my head around this is the reality of where I am. I remember I spent a lot of time in the library. Every break time I was in the library because then everybody's expected to be quiet, so you don't need to say anything that shows that you're new here, you don't know anything. But I remember there was other young people who had been in this country for longer than me. And they were the ones who started to help me to set up an email account, to work around using a computer, getting library cards and so forth. And I think they were helpful in terms of me getting used to being in this country. But I think it took me a long time outside of school because I would go home, I still did not have any friends. And so my life literally was school, church, home, in that order. And I think my parents, although they'd been here, I think there'd been a lot of issues around young people going out and being involved in various incidences. And I think there'd been a teenager who had died a few weeks before we arrived. And so the thought of us going out when it's evening was scary for them, I want to think. And so, that home before 5 rule, stayed in place, unless you've got a reason and everybody knows where you are, you have to call, you have to make sure that you've texted, and also prayer life at home. Yeah. We had a set time where we would pray together, so you knew you needed to be back for that.
I'm fully aware that your family is a prayerful family, but there's an area that I wanted you to take us through. Coming into this country, Birmingham, that's where you were. It's probably a diverse kind of city, but the color of your skin, the accent, how did that go?
A lot of people would say they did not hear me when I speak and asked me to repeat. I think one thing that became helpful, although it was initially hard, was getting a job. Yeah. So I started working in a restaurant. I used to work for Pizza Hut. Oh. I still love my pizza. And I think it was through working in that space where I would listen to what others are doing and then copy that, and they speak faster than what you're used to. Yeah. So I would meet somebody and say, hello, how are you? And then they'll be like, sorry? And then obviously when you see the other person, because you're a hostess, you're the first person at the door, and they're like, hiya, you're right. And I'm like, oh, so that's how you do it. So what do I do next? Hiya, you're right. And then you start realizing that you almost need to make your accent thinner than what it is. You almost speak at a pitch. And I think we always laugh at this at home about when we're having conversations and a phone call comes in. It's almost a different person. Yes. We're talking and then they pick up the phone. Hiya, you're right. And you're like, oh, okay, that's different. Exactly. So you're almost two people. Because the you socially out there, especially within church context, work context, social life, is completely different from the you at home. And you're constantly making those shifts. And I think it can be also exhausting.
Exhausting, yeah. And I'm so happy that you're able to explain to the viewers, to be in a position to understand, because we have people who have just moved into this country and they struggle initially, just like you did. They must realize that the day is coming when they will also be able to join in and speak a language that may be understood by those they are working with. But remember, if you go to Scotland, it's a different ballgame altogether. They have got their Scottish accent. So sometimes this accent thing really worries me, because you may end up being nobody if you're not very careful.
That is true. Yeah. But there is also the hearing what they are saying.
Yeah, that's the most difficult thing. And sometimes people just smile when someone is saying, and they would then be of the opinion that they've understood what they're talking about, when in actual fact they've understood nothing. And I think that's a real challenge. Let's just move on now to Can you share a turning point that pushed you to start building your career in the direction that has brought you now this far?
That took a long time for me. I'm somebody who, from growing up, thought I would be a doctor. And I remember even being in Zimbabwe talking to my siblings to say, you know what, I'm going to be a doctor, open my own surgery, and it would be called Dr. Julian's. And, I had a dream, and I think I came with that dream into this country. And, everybody talks about, like what you were saying earlier, that there are great opportunities here, you can do anything. And so I had done commercial subjects in Zimbabwe. And then when I came here, I thought, well, this is my fresh start. I jumped into the sciences, and I had not done chemistry, biology, physics at O level. So I was starting that at A level, which was just... So it meant that I'm doing lessons in class, but self-teaching myself in the library and at home. And so I tried to sort of pursue that line of, career to say I want to be a doctor. But I think when I look back now, I realized that God was already ordering my steps. I was just a little bit behind in realizing that. And I think it wasn't until I started challenging God to say, okay, listen, I'm tired of this. I went on to do biomedical sciences because I didn't have the requirements to go straight into medicine. So I decided to do sort of a roundabout way. You go to career people, they'll tell you do this, and then you can be able to do that. And so I did my biomedical sciences as a way of bridging into medicine. And then when I applied, they still rejected me. And then I thought, let me do my master's. But then you start to realize that your peers have actually graduated in their careers. They're starting to do all these things. And I think I really got upset with God because I was questioning, I go to church, I pray, I serve, I've been praying for this. How come you're just not doing it for me in the way you're doing it for others? And I think, I moved away from Birmingham because my master's in biomedical sciences was in Bristol. And it also meant that I was leaving all my church involvement in Birmingham. So I said to myself, I'm going to focus on getting to become a doctor. I'm wasting my time, being in church 3 times a day, a week, and so forth. And I think I challenged God to say, if you want me in church, you've got to make it clear. But otherwise, this is where I'm now focusing my energy. And I think I remember somebody reaching out to me to say there is an opportunity for a mission apprentice. And we thought of you. Here's the link. Apply. And there was a deadline. And I think I was still in my I'm very upset with you phase. I didn't apply because it was taking me back to church when I've said I'm being serious here. And I think it wasn't until after the deadline that I thought, but I gave God a challenge. So I sent in my application form and just said, well, I'm sorry I missed the deadline, but at least I did it. And that very same day, they replied and said, thank you for your application. Would like to invite you for an open day and then an interview. And I think it was in that space that I started to think, okay, God, what's going on here? And to cut a long story short, I threw all the blocks that I could. I told them I couldn't start when they wanted me to start. They said, it's fine, you can start when you're ready. And I think that just sort of shifted my focus. And when I finished my master's, I came back to work for the church.
Who or what influenced your progress outlook the most and why? Because you have got some setbacks here and there. Yes, and of course you had almost abandoned God. But of course you can never leave God out of your life because God will always be ahead of you and behind you. Do you have somebody else who was working with you, someone who encouraged you along this journey? Because it was difficult.
It was indeed. I think one of the things that probably I hadn't fully realized was within working in the church, either within the youth. So at the time, I was part of the fellowships, Sinafe Fellowships youth, and I had been in various roles, and it meant that, you know, I would work alongside other advisors, our chaplains, of which at some point you were one of the chaplains.
Indeed, I remember.
And I think it was through some of those relationships, you know, family coming from a Christian family, you know, those conversations, those we pray and we hold this time sacred to pray together as a family. And I think my supervisor when I was a mission apprentice as well, and he's the one who even said to me, have you ever thought about ministry? And it threw me off because although I was working in the church, when you've come up from a context that says women don't get ordained, you don't realize how blocked you've been. I could see women in ministry. I'd been to churches where women were in ministry, but I just could not see it for myself. I just was so blocked. So it was when he asked me, and I think my immediate answer to him was, women can be priests, because it's just there at the back of your head. And he said, well, this priest, you've seen them, that priest, you've been to their service. And then I thought, how come then I just haven't thought about it? And I think that sort of just started opening up, you know, doors and realization even within myself. And I think God had been talking, even through some of my, you know, advisors, chaplains, family. At one point, we went to an ordination at the cathedral.
Yeah.
And there was a lady who was there who said, oh, very soon we'll be coming to your ordination. And I thought, what's wrong with her?
Yeah.
You know, but then when I look back now, God had already been working these things out, placing these people who would walk into church when I was a mission apprentice and say, Reverend, can I talk to you? And I'm thinking, I'm not a reverend. I'm not even wearing a collar. Why are you calling me reverend?
Because you become a reverend before God actually calls you to ministry, you know that, because you're ordained before you're ordained, because that's how the calling of God comes. Let me look at professional growth and leadership now, because you've already started talking about ministry. And before you start talking about this, the calling and everything, all your discernment process, I have two disclaimers to you viewers, because it's important that you understand. There's a bit of noise, but it's not really noise. It's the singing that is going on. We are also having a competition going on right now as we are actually recording, which is the Zimbabwean National Anglican Music Competition, which is happening upstairs. We are downstairs. So please bear with us or enjoy and listen at the same time. Another disclaimer is obviously Reverend Tariro once worked for Pizza Hut, and it doesn't mean that Pizza Hut is sponsoring us here. It's just a disclaimer that we need to understand that Pizza Hut is not involved in all this. This is a Christian podcast for the Zimbabwean National Anglican Fellowship in the UK. Thank you. Now back to your ministry again. It's quite exciting because you being one of the first Zimbabwean, I think maybe the second, but I'm sure talking of people who actually left Zimbabwe, being very, very young, for me, you are the first young clergy woman who then obviously was trained in this country, and we look at you now and say, is this the Tariro Julian that I used to see as a young person? Praise be to God for that. The challenges. It's never easy as a woman clergy person, as well as being the first in the family, etc. What sort of barriers did you actually encounter along the journey?
So when I started, I was single. And I think coming from, like I mentioned earlier, a country that does not, or at least did not at the time, accept women ministry, it meant that a lot of my conversations, even amongst, family, they would ask, are you giving up on getting married? Because the context is, once you're married, you've assumed the father figure, because we call our reverends father. You've assumed the father figure. So what men would want to marry somebody who's a father? I think I got quite a number of questions along that line. And also, so what does that mean when in Zimbabwe we don't ordain women? And some people would ask, would you be welcomed to come back home and so forth? And I think at that point, faith-wise, I had then realized that God has got a plan for my life.
Yeah.
And now I just need to trust whatever that plan is. If it means I'm going to end up being a single person, that's actually what he has ordained for me. And if it means that somebody who will come and just compliment and love me as I am, that's also God's plan. So I then started theological college as a single person. And I think, I don't want to say at any point I was worried, because like I mentioned, I then started a faith journey, which I said, if God is the one who's calling me, then I have to trust he has a purpose for this. I think I ended up in a theological college that was up north. That was the furthest I had been up north. That's in Durham. Very, very cold. And I think to an extent, please get me right, COVID was a blessing to me, because it meant that I am not walking and trying to navigate ice and snow and so forth. But yeah, I think the college that I went to was good in the sense that, I learnt, I was exposed to new things. But I think also racism was a thing, and I had to navigate that. And I think, it was a journey that was difficult, a lot of tears, a lot of praying, but also a lot of growing in trust and faith. And I think it also made me grow as a person. One of the things that I did whilst I was in that college was to start with another colleague, a grassroots organization which was called Ordinance and Curates, UKME, GMH, Ordinance and Curates, as a space where people of UKME, GMH heritage can get together, share the challenges, help each other in terms of how are you finding it, how are you dealing with it, but also just to be able to then say to the colleges and the church, these are the challenges that we're suffering. They are not specific to Tariro, but as UKME, GMH, because one of the things about reporting issues is you can easily become a victim because you have exposed something. So this was a group in which people can share their concerns, and they are anonymous as to where they're coming from, but it's still calling out the issues and the challenges that people are facing. And I think, on leaving Durham, I'm grateful for the friendships that I've made that have carried on into ministry. And I think I'm also grateful for the college for all that it brought out from within me, that I didn't realize that I had these strengths, these abilities, and these skills.
It is very interesting that you are now almost like on a flight mode. You're now flying. You're now having this trust and faith in God. One of our anchoring Bible passages, that is Jeremiah 29, verse 11, where the Lord says, I have plans for you, and not plans to harm you, and plans to give you hope, and obviously plans also to give you a future. And I'm sure this is exactly the kind of a passage that probably you could actually have worked on. Maybe in hindsight now you can actually see that God was now directing your path, which is very good. What would you say to some women, young women who are probably thinking about ministry, knowing that there are all these barriers of racism sometimes, and you may be looked down, you write your assignment, and the examples that you're trying to give may be too African or too Zimbabwean, and what would you say? Because the joy about this country is that you may have a problem with the accent, but when it comes to writing, it's a different ballgame. There's no accent in writing. So what would you say to those who are aspiring, but they've got this fear that, will I be able to make it?
Somebody said to me, there are as much references to do not fear in the Bible as they are the number of days in a year, each for a day. And I would say exactly that. Do not fear. We are children of God.
Yes.
God is the one who calls us. And I'm not just talking about just vocational ministry, but in every area of professions that we find ourselves in, those are our calls. And God is the one who calls us. And I don't believe in a God who makes mistakes. Even the things that you might think is a mistake, it's not. God is ordering your steps. So it's just a question of, are you growing your relationship with God? Yeah. Are you following what God asks us to do? If you are, be rest assured that God is watching over you. Don't make yourself small. Speak, use your voice, use those skills. Don't make yourself small just because it might upset other people. You might be surprised that it's only just 2 people who will be upset. The majority of the people in the room were just waiting for you to do what you did, for them to also say, oh, I can do it. So don't listen to the loud voices usually that tells you stop, because most of the time I found they're in the minority. And most of the times I found they're not the ones that God has put you in that space for. It's the other silent people, silent characters, silent individuals who are just waiting for you to do what God has asked you to do. And there is liberation in that.
You were a preacher, I know that. So I will not stop you when you are saying something that I feel viewers will be very happy to hear. There is this dilemma that clergy from our country or from outside this country, we come here, we also look after our own people. That's why we have the Zimbabwe National Anglican Fellowship, which you are part of. And also you are looking after a parish under the Church of England here in Birmingham. How do you navigate between the two? Do you find some similarities, or there are some differences and difficulties? Can you take us through that?
There are some differences, I have to confess. Yeah. And I think I find myself living in 2 different worlds, depending on where I am. And sometimes it is within the same day. Because, for example, on a Sunday, if I'm doing a Shona service as well as my services at my licensed parishes, when I finish there, it's almost as if I have to take off a hat and put a different one to then come and be what the Shona service requires me to be. Just the style of preaching. We are very passionate people when we preach. We will move around, we will show actions and so forth. Most of us can't do that in our local parishes. Most of us are even told that, you will threaten, they'll feel threatened, or you will distract them. Stand in one place, just speak from where you are. So I think there is so much that changes, and I think you always have to think of the Shona service as if you are doing a service back home in Zimbabwe. There are certain things that obviously being in this country, it's no longer talked about, and it's not a thing because it's almost standardized now. But you have to go back and start to think, you're dressing. Are you wearing a trousers? Are you wearing a skirt? What does that mean to you? But then what does that mean to them? The tone with which you use it. And I think one of the things for me is the fact that I'm a young person. Yeah. And most of the times I'm ministering to people who are older than me. Yeah. People who have lived and experienced more than I have. And I think there is a tension that exists there culturally. They are my elders. But I'm also coming as a priest. Who gets to sit on the chair and who gets to stand? Who gets to be served food first? Who gets to serve the other person? So I think there are a lot of things that are sometimes at tension with one another. But it is ministry.
I know. Do you find yourself conflicted, or you are in a position to find means and ways of navigating through these difficulties and differences that you find?
I think where I am now, I have gotten to the point where I've said, God called Tariro. So Tariro has to show up how God has called her. If there is any chiseling and smoothing over that needs to happen, let God do that, as opposed to responding to the loud voices. So I think it hasn't been easy to get to this point, I have to confess, but I think I'm now in that space where I'm starting to walk in what God has called me. It's not a final version. It's still developing, and it will continue to develop. So I don't know what that will look like 10 years from now.
I know. In your opinion, why do we have more older people in church, and how can we bring the younger people in church? Because you are a young clergy person, and obviously most of our parishes, the English parishes, we do have old people. When you come to Zimbabwe, it's a different program altogether. We actually have young persons, which is actually joy. What do you want to say to viewers regarding that?
I think we need to be open-minded. Yes, we love how we used to do things, but times have moved, and especially right now, AI is taking over, and it's not just taking over in the secular world, it's even coming into our churches. COVID showed us that there are many ways of doing things, and as a church, we need to find ways of incorporating that without compromising on our faith, our beliefs. So, if we used to just play drums and shakers, how do we incorporate the keyboard in our worship? It's the little things, and also just being open-minded to what the young people can say to us. I'm always drawn to the passage in the Bible that encourages us not to allow people to look down on us just because we are young. Our young people have got so much that they can share, they can teach, even just the skills. And I think we are lacking in that understanding and openness of embracing that. And I think, especially within, the Church of England, if you look at the churches that have started to incorporate the bands and the whatever, they are full. If you look at most of the traditional ones, Anglo-Catholic especially, they are struggling. I know at the moment there is a shift, funny enough, of young people starting to want to come back. And the thing that is very surprising is they are looking to come into the Anglo-Catholic tradition. So the question remains, when they are coming, how are we going to receive them?
Are we ready for them?
Exactly. How are we going to include them? We say anything for me without me is not for me.
Yeah. And maybe as a fellowship, the Zimbabwean National Anglican Fellowship, what are we supposed to do in order to actually look after the young and bring more young persons to the church?
I think for starters, have young representation within the leadership, but also make room for open conversations. One of the things that I think the church is guilty of is the shyness from talking about real everyday issues. As a young person, I have to be honest, I never had any sermons from the pulpit about relationships. But I'm exploring relationships. I've got boys who are asking me out. If there is 3 of them, what do I do? What is the Christian way of exploring and being in relationships? So I had to go online to find when other churches are doing series on relationships, series on conflict, series. We don't talk about those things. I think currently, we've got all this political stuff going on immigration and so forth. How many people are standing on the pulpit to say immigration is a real issue, but it's also in the Bible? How did they navigate in the Bible? How is it applicable to today's world in our time?
I know you are talking about relationships. Maybe viewers may think there is a single lady. She is not. This is Mrs. Mukoja, and she's happily married, and obviously, but she's talking about real issues that really touches our lives. And I think it's important that we come to a point of addressing some of these issues in our services. Just maybe one area that I feel we need to check with you. How do you balance you're now newly married, and I can see your shining ring, which is great. How do you balance all these things that you have said and also being a married woman?
I think it can only be God, if I'm being honest. So I am married to somebody who has been a youth pastor outside of this country, but also grew up in a Christian family where his mother is also a pastor.
Yeah, that's good.
So I think some of these things that I do, he understands, which is why I said I think it can only be God.
Yeah, it can only be God. Yeah.
So I think we just have some of the things are even unspoken, where we just navigate, okay, I'm doing this, he's doing that. And we know whoever gets home first is going to just, cook dinner. And whoever gets home last gets to put their feet up because they are a little bit tired. He is a helpmate. We do things together. If we are cleaning, we can join in the cleaning together. But I think also it's the respect, the friendship, and the praying together that allows us.
I love this word, respect.
Yeah.
Good. Praying together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that just helps us to navigate anything that comes. And I think just talking to say, what can you do, what can't you do? Because it means when I've got a full-on week, he's there to catch me. And when he also has a full-on week, I also make sure that I'm able to catch him. But most importantly, it's remembering that we are not machines.
That's good.
Even Jesus rested.
As we almost now want to come to the end of our interview or conversation with Reverend Tariro, I just want you to tell us, what advice would you give to anyone hoping to be part of a discernment process in this day? Is ministry a walk in the park?
No, ministry is definitely not a walk in the park, but it is also worth it. I think when you work for the Lord, there is no way of describing how it is. It is hard, it is challenging, there is conflict, but also God is in all of those things. God is strengthening you in all those things. So I think for somebody who's discerning, I would say, trust the God who has called you to this. Trust him to surround you with the right people to help you through. But most importantly, pray, and pray again.
Thank you ever so much. Do you have one thing that you may just want to tell your listeners? Just one thing. Remember this about breaking barriers in diaspora. Do you have this one thing bubbling in your heart that you just want to share with the listeners?
My brother says in Shona, kushandira Jehovah ndiko kusununguka kwechokwadi, which says when you work for the Lord, you have the true freedom that can ever be granted. So I would say, wherever you are, just be conscious and live an exemplary life that says, God is here, God is love, and you are loved. I don't know whether you feel called to ministry or to other things. just remember that even in that call, God is using you to touch somebody's life. And I hope you will keep a life of prayer, because you will not be able to do it unless you are centered by God, by Jesus, and the Holy Spirit.
Once again, Reverend Tariro, we just want to say thank you ever so much for sharing your journey, breaking all those barriers in diaspora. And I can safely say to you, continue to break those barriers. Break them and break them and break them again, because it is very important that other people who are looking at you and listening to you today, they will learn from what you have shared with us. And I just hope you continue to be guided by the Lord and to know that God has got plans for you. Plans to give you life, to give you hope, and not plans to harm you. And so, once again, thank you ever so much for coming to the podcast. Thank you. Thank you very much. And to our lovely viewers, thank you so much. And we continue to ask you to share and subscribe to other people so that they may learn and listen to whatever we are sharing with other viewers as well. Once again, from me, Father Lameck, from the Zimbabwe National Anglican Fellowship, once again, thank you so much and God bless you.